All right, if you're looking to build a high-performance, healthy home, one big part of that is controlling the air inside your home. We're going to look today at air barrier continuity and what that means and how we did that on this custom home. It's going to make a big difference in how much air leaks out of this house and how we can control the air. So I'm going to walk you around and show you a couple different things we did. So this home is using the zip system. So that's the green plywood that you'll see on the outside. It's technically OSB product, which is this right here. And it's green on the outside. We tape our seams or we'll caulk all of our nail holes with the zip liquid flash. So what happens during the framing stage, and this is where you get a lot of leaks, is you end up having your zip will come up here to, this is the top of the wall right here. This is the short wall inside this two-story house. This could be 8, 9, 10 feet tall. It doesn't matter. But that plywood or the zip is actually stopping right here. What you see here is another piece here that's coming up. It's up in the vented attic. So the critical spot is where it transitions to actually conditioned space in your home right here. So what we want to do before we set our trusses is we want to take zip tape. And we want it, and this is one way to do this, you come and you tape over the face of the plywood on the outside or over the face of the zip sheathing. And you come up and you come underneath here over the top and inside on the face of your plate in the wall. You don't need to come down very far, just enough here, right here, to get past this. This is a little farther than it needs to be. And then you set your trusses. So you frame your walls, then you put the zip on, then you set your trusses. So what that does is you actually continue the continuity of that air barrier all the way in to the inside of your home. And now that gives us an opportunity to now continue that air barrier up towards on the whole entire ceiling. And this house is actually very difficult compared to a flat ceiling. It's all chopped up, and we'll look at that in a minute. But essentially what we're trying to achieve here, and this can be done with a smart vapor retarder that would help you to control vapor a little differently than the Tyvek will, but we're looking at an air barrier here. So the Tyvek will stop the air, and what we've done is I take a piece of zip tape, which you can see, I'll grab one of these right here, you can see what it looks like. It comes in a roll like this. This is what it looks like here. But we take that, I cut the tape in half actually because it's 3 3/4 wide, and I stick this onto the Tyvek and onto this other piece of zip tape here, and then I'll hammer tack this to my trusses on the bottom quarter of my trusses. And what it's done is it's taken that outside edge there where the zip sheathing stopped. I came over my top plate and come into the house, and then it's continued. So that's my air barrier. And then I'm going to come up and continue that air barrier all the way up on my trusses on my ceiling. And then my drywall will go right over the top of this, and then the insulation will sit up in here. You know, the bats will sit in here just like that. And now I got a complete air barrier all the way up to my ridge until I hit an interior wall. So the interior walls pose a problem, and you can see here what we've done on these is we've taken and we taped the very edge, or right here on the wall. You tape this. You don't need to go over the tops of the walls. You just need to get to right here. So wherever this thing goes through, or just down over this joint here on this second plate. So right to there. Once you do that, now I can foam this. I can foam any penetrations in here, and that will stop the air. And then I'll just tape that just like I did this tie back here, and that stops that air from going out. You got to make sure you get over the joint on that top plate, or from that one top plate down, so you're covering the seam on that wall. You got to get down onto this first top plate slightly so that crack doesn't leak any air. If you use any of these truss connector screws, I did another video on these. These move and they have a hole in them, and I showed how to seal the tops of those with either zip stretch tape and or zip liquid flash to seal that on the top side. You've got to do that. So the other way you can do it is you can take and you run zip tape all the way over the top and on both sides of that plate. But ultimately, you're able to work around your interior walls at the top, and then also here where you have any interior walls that hit, say, like a girder like this, you have to wrap this as well, because we're going to continue that air barrier on this, because this is the attic space as well on the face here. So you can see we actually have the zip tape on top or under these drywall shims. That's so we don't get the air leaking through the drywall shim. We can now tie on right here, and we'll put either a smart vapor retarder or Tyvek or something that'll be an air barrier here that allows vapor to move through it. So this is an example here of how that will look up there once it's done, so the air can get through this. It doesn't necessarily have to have all that extra zip right there, but just the edges are all that's needed just to tie it together. And then if you look out, this is another area that's difficult, this with the scissor truss, and then this doesn't have a truss on the outside. This is a balloon framed wall. So we actually had to put a rafter on the very top, and you kind of see that here. So the rafter that we ripped down, we taped the top of the rafter, and then we caulked every single joint all the way down until we get to conditioned space. You can even see this joint caulked right here. So we don't want any air leaking up here and getting past up and out the top on that wall. And then we take this right here, this tape, and put this on our backing, and then that allows this to come over, and then we can tie into that and go all the way across, and it'll tie in here. And that allows us to have air barrier continuity on the ceiling. So another spot that it's really common to get leaks is in these girders. So this is a girder truss. You can see this right here. This is a 2-ply girder that's right here. And what you can't see this really well at this point right now, but we tape this girder on the bottom before we shim some of this with the drywall shims. And this is a spot where this air barrier is going to come across like this, and then it's also coming up the face of this here, and it's going to stop. That air will not leak up in the middle of this girder and out. We also make sure everything gets in there. We're doing this as well here. We're going to seal this up in here really good where these girders are at. It's a really common spot to get a leak. So, and you can see here where we've also got the zip tape where we're going to tie on, and we're going to go up into this unconditioned space all the way up. And then the same thing here. We got an interior wall that has zip on it, and we're going to continue that tie back all the way around. All right, so back where we first started, we were looking at this detail we did when we put the zip tape over the top of the zip sheathing and then brought it into the inside of the house. So let's say we didn't do this. What would we have to do in order to seal this up? The bottom line is it's going to be very difficult and virtually impossible to get a really good seal. But you'd have to come in here with caulking and foam, and you'd have to start sealing up against the trusses and back here on the plate, and you really can't get behind some of this to let where the air is going to come up through. So, and you got hardware and all this in the place too. So it's really difficult, and you're going to get some leaks regardless. So if you can take the time to coordinate with your framer right from the very beginning when you're designing things, and before the trusses go on, you can really get a much better product and leave yourself some options on how you're going to actually make this air barrier be continuous all throughout your entire ceiling in your house. So it doesn't cost a lot of money to do this, but it does create some planning. And remember too, this house, looking back, if you look over here, this is really cut up. Like, look at the ceilings in here. This is not typical for just a standard home. Would have probably a level second floor, the ceiling would be level, or you may have some scissor trusses, but you're not going to run into all these different variations in girder trusses and all of that inside of a home. So make sure that you take the time when you're planning the very beginning to make sure air barrier continuity is part of your plan. Thanks for watching. If you'd like more information about building a custom home, an ADU, or doing a whole house remodel project, you can visit our website at freemansconstruction.com. Or if you need help with your real estate needs, either buying or selling your home or land, feel free to visit our real estate company's website at freemansrealty.com. Thanks again for watching.